First up, you need the substrate for your epoxy countertop, and I'm using Baltic birch plywood since this countertop will be for my bathroom vanity. MDF is another good option, or you can do this over your existing countertops, and I've even done this technique over concrete. And speaking of that bathroom vanity, make sure you check out that full bathroom renovation video and get subscribed to follow along the entire Dream House Renovations series. I've glued up 2 layers of plywood, and I'm adding a 3/4 inch strip of plywood to the leading edge for an overhang on the vanity. I used some of this DAP wood putty to fill in along those exposed plywood edges, and this is gonna help hide all the plies in that final piece. I also gave the leading edge of the countertop a slight chamfer, and this breaks up the edges and allows the epoxy to flow over the sides more smoothly. Since I'm going with a white marble look, it's a good idea to go ahead and paint your substrate the base color so there's no chances for that wood to show through the epoxy. Plus, it just gives the countertop more depth. Okay, what we're gonna try to do here is create Carrara marble or something that looks close to it with some of this Total Boat tabletop epoxy. I'll do 1 coat of white to further hide that wood grain that you can still kind of see through the paint. And then I'll come back with a 2nd coat of white and then feather in veins of black to really give it that Carrara marble look. Like I mentioned, I'm using Total Boat's tabletop epoxy, which is a 1-to-1 mix ratio, and this makes it really easy to measure out what you need. And for this first pour, I'm gonna use 32 ounces total. I added in some of this white pigment, which you can also get from Total Boat, and mixed everything thoroughly. Again, this first coat is just to establish a solid white base layer before we do the marbling effect. I've made sure my workpiece is level on the table and that there's room for the epoxy to drip over the sides onto the plastic. And I made sure to put down plastic on top of my workbench and on the floor so I can catch all of the drips. I'm using this squeegee, or it's also called a plastic spreader, to move that epoxy around the countertop as evenly as possible. Once I've got the top even, I'll start moving the epoxy to the sides to help it to spill over that edge. Last, I come in with this foam brush and I make sure I get an even coat along the edges. Now you can pour the next layer in an hour after that first layer has gelled up, but I had to wait a day for the second pour, so here I'm sanding the top to provide a rough surface for that next layer to grab onto. And I've got a special guest in the shop today that's gonna help with the pour, and he's gonna try this technique himself for the first time and show all of you just how easy it is to make epoxy marble countertops. All right, we're ready for round 2 of the pour, and look who decided to join me. It's Mike from Modern Builds.
It was my mom's birthday, so I came into town, and it just also happens to be the fact that Johnny is starting an incredibly huge business.
It's laboratory, check it out. Now we're gonna mix up another batch of the tabletop epoxy from Total Boat. We'll pour that white layer on, and then we're gonna feather in some veins of black. It's gonna end up looking like Carrara marble. It's gonna be awesome.
I'm excited, I'm so excited.
Let's go.
All right. I'm nervous, to be honest. I'm
Really?
excited, but like I said, you're taking the lead on this. I'm here to learn. I'm like one of the people in the audience. I'm just doing it in real life.
I like it. 24 ounces of part A. We just want to make sure on this one there's no margin for error. I'd rather have some left over than not have enough. I get pretty precise with my stuff because I've heard horror stories of stuff not curing.
Is it a thing where in a world where if a mistake has to happen, it's better to have a little more hardener?
Correct.
Because the only thing that's going to happen is it just hardens a little fast instead of not hardening.
You put in too much hardener and maybe it exotherms on you, it kicks and runs away. But on something like this, all you're going to do is you're going to probably sand down that coat because it won't dry flat, and then you can just do it again. So it won't be that big of a deal if that happens. Hey Siri, set a timer for 3.5 minutes.
Here, let me be your stir guy. That's something I can do.
Okay.
You scrape the sides a lot, yeah?
Oh yeah. Okay, here we've separated out a small amount of epoxy to mix the black pigment in, and then that large container gets mixed with white pigment. And again, I'm putting on this base layer just like I did with that first white epoxy layer, making sure to spread everything out evenly along the top, and then help push it to the edge so it spills over the sides.
Looking good.
Yep, so we're gonna get a good flood coat on there, and then with the squeegee, we're just gonna work it. I came back with a foam brush and coated all the edges, again making sure to get it all nice and even. Now it's time to feather in all those black veins that are gonna give this countertop a true Carrara marble look, and the key is getting the lines as thin as you possibly can and not going too heavy. Now, if you go look at photos of Carrara marble, you'll see different patterns, kind of similar to how wood has different grain patterns, and here I'm going for this diagonal crisscross pattern. The main tool I use to feather in those lines is a chip brush, and I'll link the one that I use down below. I also make sure to have a few foam brushes on hand and a thin stick for the smaller detail work. Using a quick chopping motion, I feather in those veins of black that I laid down, which gives them a whispery, natural look similar to what real marble looks like. And the best part, this is really hard to mess up. And to prove this point, I had Mike jump in and take over. Now, like many of you, he's never done this technique, but after a few minutes of watching me, he's able to step in and make it look every bit as good as the areas that I worked on. One of my favorite things about doing this is the way it looks as the black epoxy veins spill over the sides. So I've added a couple more of those veins along the edge, and here I'm feathering those in as well. And now I can break the surface tension of the epoxy by using a propane torch, which allows any trapped bubbles to escape. And just so you folks can see it one more time, here's some quick shots of me applying these same techniques on the side and backsplash pieces for that bathroom vanity. All right, that epoxy pour turned out really well. The only problem is at this point, it looks like epoxy. It's got that high gloss finish of epoxy, and I want this to look like real marble stone. Now, in order to do that, we're gonna sand it. Now, sanding this down and kind of honing that is gonna give it that kind of matte marble look. Normally, at this point, you'd want to go ahead and pour a clear coat so as you sand, you're not digging into the marble striations that you created. However, I went a little bit heavier with the black than what I wanted to, so I'm actually going to sand right into this. Try to tone that down a little. There's plenty of epoxy on here. I just want enough to kind of knock off that sheen and take away a little bit of how heavy those black striations are. Now, as I sand here, you can see how it transforms from an epoxy pour to a more subtle matte finish that looks much more like actual marble, and how those toned down blacks look way more natural. For this project, the next step was to place that countertop into the bathroom and then cut it down to size. I like to finish these types of epoxy countertops with a hard wax like this Odie's oil, and it's not going to reintroduce that sheen on top of the epoxy and take away that honed marble look. All right, there you have it. Simple epoxy countertops. Now check out Total Boat and make sure to use my discount that I've got linked below for 10% off at totalboat.com, and pick up one of their epoxy marble countertop kits that's going to have everything you need to make your own epoxy marble countertop. Thanks for watching. Get subscribed to see the other dream house renovation videos, and I'll see you back here next time on Johnny Builds.